Hi, my name is Victor and I'm a senior cloud security engineer at Prodigy Education, a company where we make learning math fun for kids. Today I'd like to talk to you about tracking incident commanders and incident responders inside Datadog and what we can glean from visualizing this information, how we can act on it. A few weeks ago, a coworker of mine, Justin, showed me one of our graphs of the top incident commanders, and the graph seemed pretty suspicious, so I decided to investigate and have a look at what the responder distribution looked like. So if we have a look at the responder data here at Prodigy and try to make some hypotheses from why there's such a cluster of the top responders, we could hypothesize this: the infrastructure folks constantly responding. We could say that maybe there are a couple of paying services that we'd love to address, and their owners continue to respond to incidents because those services keep falling over. Or we have some curious parties, maybe the same people always supervise the call, or maybe there's a bot. The reality is that the responders are not constantly from the same teams. They're not the infrastructure folks sitting around there. It actually ends up being multi-domain experts, developers that understand how things are pretty well interconnected. They also end up being experienced responders, so they continue to respond often, and they build their confidence, so they're happy joining the call, and they know they're expected to be the faces around there to build some confidence within the actual incident call. So if we look at the commander data, we see the same kind of distribution. You see that there are top two people here that respond quite often, and we try to hypothesize why. And again, the first knee-jerk reaction, like, well, these people own very painful services. They keep falling over, so their owners are always on the call trying to fix them. Their infrastructure is always on the call during the incident to see if maybe they need to fix something in Kubernetes, they need to scale, they need to understand something that way. But again, the realities of this data are not really aligning with those hypotheses. The top responders are a principal developer and an architect. They own completely different and very vast domains. They're not the owners of a single painful service that constantly falls over. They are also people that are fairly senior in the organization that you will trust to make business critical decisions. They're also excellent problem solvers. Because they know how well everything's interconnected, they can really dig deep and solve things fairly quickly just based on their domain knowledge. So, as a quick aside, before we analyze some of this data further and talk about what Prodigy has done and is doing to address it, I'd like to talk about the assumptions that I made when first joining incident response and thinking about the roles of commanders and responders. So my assumption was always that the commander is the absolute expert. They're able to dig deep, they solve the problems, they get back to green, and the responders are helpers. They're there to kind of pitch ideas and be there to support the commander. In reality, it seems to be a little bit of the inverse. The commander is mostly a person to delegate responders. The responders are meant to do all of the digging deep and all of the problem solving. They're meant to be numerous, and they're meant to be experts in their specific veins. The commander is responsible for documenting the incident, for communicating the incident status, and making business critical decisions if need be. So, that being said, if we come back to the data and like I mentioned, the actual responsibilities, the vulnerabilities and remediations that we see related to this data are fairly interesting. So we're pretty vulnerable to the bus factor, or the lottery factor, if you will. If somebody wins the lottery and leaves the company, and let's say it's both of those two guys in the same lottery pool, we lose a gigantic amount of our incident command capacity, and the responders will look fairly similar. Would lose a great amount of our incident response capacity, and that's mostly because the confidence builds on confidence here. We can see that once some of these commanders start responding or commanding, they will continue to command incidents. They will do it more and more often because they become confident and they know they're effective and they can continue to do it. Other people leave it in their hands because if they see a severity 1 or 2 incident, they know that those are the people that will get back to green fastest. So we've seen some teams begin addressing these silos. We've seen the infrastructure team taking less incidents and not automatically assuming that everything's infrastructure related and only being pulled in if there's a suspicion that infrastructure is needed there. We've also seen some of our architects that respond to incidents fairly often back off incident response and create space for others to take an incident. So I'm wondering if you looked within your organization, if you would be able to see data very similar to this, if you see the same familiar faces on those incident Zoom calls, and what you would do about it. We're already planning to formalize some of these learnings and try to create more space for more junior devs or even our seniors and like non-principal and non-architect developers to be able to do incident response. And we're considering creating a system where we would escalate to the principals and the architects for like non-severity 1 and 2 incidents, so everyone can get a hand at incident response and incident command to just build their confidence and make sure that we break down those silos and be able to have a more effective and diverse team of responders. Having the same faces and the same ideas constantly is it can be questionable, right? You can always benefit from new perspectives and from having many more people that are actually able to field, say, vacations and stuff like that and be able to cover those people. So I encourage you to plot this data and have a look if you do your incident management with Datadog and see if you can raise these questions too. Thanks.